Hi guys, this is vf.miniatures Warhammer Tactics series, and today I would like to discuss with you the crazy murderous handsome bastards which are the Blood Angels. I've always been a fan of these guys and I love their playstyle, so let's discuss how to play them competitively. As always, we'll start with the strength of the chapter, and thanks to the great Blood Angels rules, there's a lot to talk about here. Obviously, they are Marines, so they have access to all the great stuff from the Space Marine book, all the great units like Vanguard Vets, Blade Guard Vets, Eradicators, and so on. Some important elements like the Death to the Traitor stratagem to reroll all hits against Heretic Astartes for combat, Commanding Oratory to automatically recite a litany in any phase of your choosing, and so on. And in addition to that, they have access to a lot of great unique units that are made for combat. Mainly the Sanguinary Guard and the Librarian Dreadnought. And they have a lot more stuff in the character section, which we'll discuss a bit later. If you were to ask me what is the main thing about the Blood Angels that makes them one of the best, in my opinion, melee chapters out of all the Space Marine chapters, I would say it's their chapter tactic. +1 to wound and +1 to advances and charges is just too great to have any competition. +1 to wound part is just awesome. It makes any unit that has any kind of close combat weapon, any at all, anything that even resembles a weapon, it makes them much deadlier in combat. In my opinion, it's even better than the Hunters Unleashed because it helps you to wound those high toughness targets, which is something that is a big problem for Space Marines with their strength 4, and especially when they don't have good close combat weapons. Generally, I think that there are more ways to help your Space Marines hit better than there are ways to help them wound better. If you, say, take a 5-man unit of Assault Intercessors and charge a Dreadnought with them, you would have much more efficiency out of the +1 to wound that you would get from the +1 to hit. And the second part is incredible also, because when you need to advance and get to somewhere, you have +1. When you need to charge something, you get +1. When you charge from Deep Strike, you get +1. So you are always that a little bit faster than the usual Space Marine, which is very important for something that makes all the damage in combat, or most of the damage in combat. And their super doctrine is just a twist on the Savage Fury of the Space Wolves. It's called Savage Echoes, and you get +1 attack on the charge when charged or when you perform a heroic intervention, basically double shock assault. Blood Angels and Blood Angel successors also get access to the Sanguinary Discipline, which is an awesome psychic discipline. It has some crucial movement and protective spells that I'd recommend to always have in your lists, and we'll look closer at how you should probably use them a little bit later in this video. For one command point, any of your psychers can cast an additional power. It may be very important for some lists where you can't really cram another librarian into the force, and you need to cast, for example, 3 powers in the first turn, and you need some way to do that. Of course, you can just simply fail to cast the power, but having the chance to make an extra power go off is very important, and for one command point, it's a great ability. Other thing is that the Blood Angels have a lot of ways, multiple ways to get +1 to hit in melee, which is obviously important for a melee chapter, and it reinforces my point about importance of the +1 to wound of their chapter tactic even further, I think. You can build some extremely nasty characters with the relics and traits you have in the book, and we'll discuss those combos later in the video. Just as their Space Wolves cousins, the Blood Angels have a load of unique characters in the supplement, and there are like 2 or 3 pages of them. Most of them aren't worth talking about, but some are, and we'll do that in the special characters section of this video. The Blood Angel Secondaries are great in my opinion, and I think with the new rules that you can't take the Oath of Moment and the secondary from the supplement, it will be even harder usually for Space Marines to choose secondaries, but some of the Blood Angels ones I think are worth even the loss of the Oath of Moment. Blood Angels aren't perfect by any means, and they also have some weaknesses. Probably the biggest thing that I've noticed whilst building the list for the Blood Angels was that you don't have enough HQ slots for them. There is a lot of stuff that you want to take and you need to take in your lists, and you just simply don't have enough slots. And if you try to take multiple detachments, you will very quickly run out of command points, which you obviously need for all of your games. Absolute minimum amount of command points you may have at the start of the game is around 6 or 7. It's the number that I found to be sufficient if you spend them wisely and build your list correctly. And the Blood Angels don't have any ways to regain command points, so the command points that you get at the start of the command phase is all you get. You may have noticed that when I talked about the unique units of the Blood Angels, I did not mention the Death Company, and it was for a particular reason. I think that the Death Company part of the codex is very bad. It's underpowered, it's overpriced, it has some stupid rules that seem to me like a misprint. For example, the Leadership 7 on the Death Company. These guys are insane. They are in a berserk killing rage. They think that they are Primarch or that they're fighting the Heretic Astartes on the Arch-Traitor's flagship. They are not running away from the fight. They are, as it says in the lore, thrown themselves in some extreme, ridiculous circumstances where no one, even the Space Marine, would go, and they come out of those circumstances alive. And they made these guys Leadership 7. So the same leadership as the sergeant of the infantry squad of the Imperial Guard. They're kidding me, right? And in addition to that, they can't fall back. So when they get stuck, and there's no way for them to get out of the fight unless they kill the something that they are in combat with, and it will be harder with each passing turn because you will lose the Shock Assault, you will lose the Red Thirst, you will lose Savage Echoes, and all of that good stuff. So yeah, Death Company needs a major rework in my opinion. I was very happy when I saw, when the book came out, I saw that you can upgrade the characters for like 20 points. You can get them the Death Company rules, so 6-up shrug and +1 attack on the charge. But when I realize that you lose the ability to help all of your Blood Angels units and your auras only affect the Death Company units around, I was very, very disappointed. Stratagem section of the supplement feels a little bit stale to me. I think that many of the things that they've changed are for the better of the game, like the 3d6 charge was stupid and no one should be able to charge so reliably from Deep Strike, but Red Thirst, for example, a great stratagem that allowed you to have plus D3 attacks on the character, I think it was changed to that strange additional AP on the wound roll of 6 for the whole army for 2 command points stratagem that nobody ever uses, and that's not great. Of course, with the Codex Space Marines and some good stratagems that are in the book, you have all the stuff you need. I just think that they could have done a little bit better with this section of the supplement. Another thing we should remember about the Blood Angels is that they aren't Dark Angels, they aren't Iron Hands, they aren't even the Salamanders. They don't have any buffs in the core rules for their survivability, and not even some stratagems to help them stay alive a little bit longer, unless you are the Death Company units. They have still the stratagem to have a 5-up shrug, which won't probably help them because they don't have an invulnerable save still, so they will probably die anyways, even with the 2 wounds and the 5-up shrug. So you should treat your Blood Angels like a very elite and fragile army, a glass hammer incarnate. And the last weakness that I found in this codex, in the supplement, is that you don't get any rules to fall back and charge, unless we're talking about a relic for a character. I mean, for the most of your units, you won't be able to fall back and charge. So be careful and only charge the things that you really are sure that you're gonna get rid of. Now the army composition. We should always focus on the strength of the army in question, but remember to build a balanced force. So how do we do that with the Blood Angels? First, we should start as always with a fire base, something that can shoot the enemy whilst you are advancing up the board. And there are a number of options in the Space Marines book. I will mention 4 of them. The Contemptor Dreadnoughts are a great way to start. They are versatile, they are pretty beefy, so they won't go down without a fight. 9 wounds, they don't degrade, they have an 8-inch move, they can fight themselves, and they can shoot with their multi-melters, and multi-melters are a pretty efficient weapon. They cost 150 points each, and they take up the elite slot, which is probably their only weakness. You usually don't have enough elite slots in the Space Marines detachments. That's what I like about the Eliminators. They don't take up the elite slot, they instead use the heavy support one, which is usually more empty. They have very good defense with their 1-up save and cover. They have great firepower with the last fusils at strength 8, AP 3 and damage 3, and their ballistic skill 2+. It only costs 90 points to run a unit of 3, and I would recommend to have 3 units of 3 when we're talking about a 2000 point list. There are also Invader UTVs. They are very efficient in terms of points, they have a lot of wounds, they have toughness 5, they are very fast and have multi-melters and some light firepower with their auto bolt rifles. The only thing I don't like about them is they don't have an invulnerable save, and that means that they are not very survivable. Of course, you have the Shield of Sanguinius psychic power in the Sanguinary discipline, so you can provide them with a 5-up in 1, but as you'll see in the next passage, you will need this in 1 for something else. And the last option is the drop pod full of Devastators with multi-melters. I like this option because it allows you to have the drop on your opponent, so you will shoot their units first before they have the chance to retaliate. What I don't like about them is that they aren't survivable when they land, so you will probably only have a single turn of shooting with them before they get killed. Of course, the goal of this list is to saturate your opponents with targets so much that they won't have the time and resources to invest in killing the shooting platforms you have. They should be too busy trying to survive the onslaught of your combat elements. And here we move to one of the best units, I think, in the whole Blood Angel supplement, the Librarian Dreadnought. Let me tell you about this unit. It's a Dreadnought, a typical small Dreadnought with 8 wounds, which has the character keyword. So you decide when you want to go out and play, and until then this model is virtually untouchable. The Librarian Dreadnought has the smokescreen keyword, so when the enemy targets it with a shooting attack, you can make it -1 to hit, which is very important for it to survive the turn of shooting when you launch it into the enemy. What do I mean by launch? I mean using the Wings of Sanguinius psychic power, which is arguably one of the best move psychic powers in all of the Space Marine supplements. You basically get an extra 12 inches of movement. You make a normal move, a 12-inch normal move, with the fly keyword. You lose this fly keyword when the psychic phase ends, so it's a little bit nerfed compared to what it was in the 8th edition, but still it's extremely powerful to have an 18-inch move on a Dreadnought. Dreadnought that can fight very well with 5 attacks on the charge at strength 12, AP 3 and damage 3, and 1 extra attack with the halberd at strength 8, AP 3 and damage D3 plus 3. And on top of that, you can cast Quickening on the same Librarian Dreadnought and have D3 extra attacks and reroll charges and advances. And when we remember that the Librarian Dreadnought obviously also has the chapter tactic, the +1 to wound, which means that it will be wounding anything in the game on 2s with most of its attacks, and the halberd will probably wound all the things on 2s, or at least on 3s if it's toughness 8. And the Librarian Dreadnought obviously has the +1 to advances and charges, so when you make that 18-inch move, it will be much easier to make the charge, especially considering that you will probably also have the reroll from the Quickening. So yeah, in most of the Blood Angels lists, I think the Librarian Dreadnought is the MVP of the roster. Of course, you can't really make the list without other units, so let's talk about other stuff that we should add. I think that you should have at least one heavy hitting deep strike unit in your force, I think about something like Assault Terminators or maybe Sanguinary Guard. I think the Assault Terminators are better because they are tougher than the Sanguinary Guard. Sanguinary Guard have only 2 wounds each and they don't have an invulnerable save, whereas the Assault Terminators have 1-up save, 3 wounds each, and a 4-up in 1. But the Sanguinary Guard are a bit cheaper than the Assault Terminators, and they also are much faster. So when they land and kill the initial target, they will be much quicker to get to the next one. So for the HQs, again, we need the Librarian Dreadnought for the same old combination that I've talked about previously. And I would also recommend to have a second Librarian for the Shield of Sanguinius power and the Unleash Rage power. The Shield of Sanguinius again grants a 5-up and 1 to the chosen unit, and the Unleash Rage is basically the Savage Fury of the Space Wolves with the exploding 6s to hit. The 6s to hit generate additional hits. You can only apply it to your core units, so you can't really use it on the Librarian Dreadnought, for example, but it's very useful for the Terminators, the Sanguinary Guard, and stuff like that. Next is obviously the Chaplain. What can we do without the good old Canticle of Hate with 4+2 to charges and +3 to consolidations and pile-ins, and the Litany of Hate because we need help hitting. We aren't Space Wolves, so we don't hit on Zeus whenever we want, so the Litany of Hate is a very useful litany ability to have. A captain of some sort. You can choose a captain with a jump pack or a captain on bike. These probably are 2 best options because they are the fastest and you need to be fast to keep up with your main assault. Troops are a typical conundrum for any of your Spaceman's chapters, and the Blood Angels aren't an exception. You can either go for the Vanguard detachment and skip the troops, and have 3 command points less, which is a problem for Blood Angels as we've already discussed, or you can go for the Assault Intercessors and the Battalion Detachment and spend 300 points on them. They aren't half bad, they are pretty good, especially with the Blood Angels +1 to wound, but still your elite units for the same price would be better, so the choice is up to you. One thing I want you to remember to do always, keep your characters safe. They should be covered by a reliable source of lookouts, sir, either dreadnoughts or multiple squads of infantry, or unit of terminators, anything that can't really be killed in a single shooting phase, or it will take the entire force of the enemy to do so, because your characters are your gold. And last but not least, we should remember to have some self-reliant units that will be zipping around the board, claiming objectives, attacking poorly defended units, and stealing objectives from your opponent. And there is no better unit for that than the Vanguard Vets with the claws and shields and jump packs, especially with the Blood Angels +1 to the charges and +1 to wound for the claws is extremely powerful. When you are rerolling all wounds and adding +1 to wound, it means that you will probably be wounding anything you want very reliably. Now the special characters. It's a very funny thing because if I were to build a competitive list, I would probably not include any of these guys in it, but still they are very, very good, all these 4 characters. As promised, I've skipped all the guys that I think aren't worth the hassle, so let's talk about these 4 lucky ones. And let's start with the commander Dante. He is a chapter master, so he can grant a single unit full rerolls to hit. Very important, for example, for the Librarian Dreadnought, which hits on 3s, not 2s. And he gives you a command point if he's your Warlord. His Warlord trait, however, isn't great. It's +3 to his aura, so his reroll once to hit aura is 9 inches. And he also has an aura of +1 leadership within 9 of him. He's pretty beefy, 6 wounds, toughness 4, 4-up and 1 to up save, and -1 to hit from both shooting and combat. He's not a bad fighter by any means. He has 7 attacks at strength 7, AP 3, and damage 2, and damage 2 is the worst part of it, because many things in the game nowadays have the -1 damage, so having only 7 attacks with damage 1 basically isn't great for such a heroic character. He also has an ability to use one epic deed stratagem in the game for free, so the only death that does duty and fight on death, or the Angel's Sacrifice, Blood Angel stratagem that prevents your opponent from targeting anything else that is within engagement range of a unit if a character that you've chosen for the stratagem, for example Dante in this case, is within engagement range of that enemy unit as well. Not bad, it's like having 1 or 2 extra command points, and the command points are something that the Blood Angels really struggle to have enough of. He has a jump axe, so obviously a 12-inch move and the fly keyword, and all that you can buy for 165 points. Is it worth it? I don't know, I'm not sure. But if you have this model, if you like the character, he's certainly not bad. And also he has a cool Inferno pistol, and I love Inferno pistols. I think they're pretty great, especially for someone who already has the 2-up save, so he doesn't need a Storm Shield. Sanguinary Priest is the best chief apothecary in town. He can use the Teeth of Terror relic, and he can have a jump axe, so a 12-inch move, and 7 attacks at strength 6, AP 2 and damage 2. Pretty great for an apothecary. Blood Chalice ability allows you to activate the Assault Doctrine, so the Savage Echoes as well, pretty much from the first turn, and for 1 command point you can do that to 2 of your core character units, excluding vehicles. His only problem is that he's 155 points with all the upgrades, and he's an HQ, so again it will be hard to fit him in your list, but he's definitely worth the hassle. Next up is the Chief Librarian Mephiston, the new Primaris model, relatively new. And he has toughness 5, 6 wounds, 2-up save, no invulnerable save unfortunately, probably his biggest weakness, 5-up shrug instead. He unfortunately doesn't have +1 to cast, but he knows 3 powers and can deny 2 as any Chief Librarian shall. He has 6 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 10, AP 3 and damage D3, so he's not bad in combat, not extremely powerful with the D3 damage, but not bad, and 7 inches of movement as a vampire should. He's a good second librarian as a way to help your main librarian Dreadnought. And the last character on this list is Sanguinor. He is a good assistant HQ, has a lot of very nice utility options. 6-inch heroic intervention, he can fall back and charge, he activates Shock Assault within 6 of him for core and character units, even when they stay in combat, which is very important, especially in the later turns of the game. And most importantly, he can emerge inside engagement range, like the Ian Karn, for example, and attack opponents as if he was heroically intervening, which is incredible. With the stratagem Angel's Sacrifice that I've already talked about, he can really mess up your opponent's plans in the fight phase. His probably only weakness is that he's again an HQ, so it will be hard to find real estate in the list for him, but if you do, he's certainly worth the 150 points that they are asking for him. These secondaries of the Blood Angels. Let's look at 3 of them. They have actually 4 secondaries in the supplement, but the 4th one is for Death Company only, and we've already talked about how I feel about the Death Company. First of all is the Relentless Assault. I love this secondary. It's in the Battlefield Supremacy category, so it won't be very contested. There's only engage on all fronts there, which is not bad, but I'm not sure that you will be able to reliably do that with such an elite army as the Blood Angels. And there is Stranglehold, which I like, but this one I think feels even better than those 2. You score 4 victory points at the end of your turn. If there are more Blood Angels units from your army in the enemy deployment zone than there are enemy units in your deployment zone. I like all the secondaries that are achieved at the end of your turn because you have more control over them. And you can score the secondary on your first turn. So if you are building a list that I recommend, you will have a very good chance of scoring it on your first turn if you are able to charge with the Librarian Dreadnought. And you don't even have to be wholly within your enemy's deployment zone. You can just touch the enemy deployment zone and still achieve the secondary. Of course, the enemy will have a very difficult choice, either to go closer to your units, which is a bad idea if you're playing against a combat army, and try to move into your deployment zone, or to stay away and let you have those 4 victory points. If you are playing against an army that has a lot of teleportation, a lot of units that are coming out from deep strike, probably you should stay away from this one, but those armies are few and far between. Next is the typical challenge secondary. The Space Wolves have the same one. I don't recommend to use it unless you are really sure that you will be able to kill that character that the opponent will probably use for this challenge. So you should probably take something like Assassinate or bring it down instead. And in the No Mercy, No Respite category, or otherwise known as the Oath of Moment category, is the Death from Above secondary. You score 2 victory points at the end of your turn if any enemy units were destroyed by a Blood Angels unit from your army that was set up on the battlefield in the reinforcement step of any of your movement phases. If any of those units were character units, you score 3 victory points instead. So, not a bad secondary if you have enough units in Deep Strike. If you have only 1 or 2, I would probably recommend to stick to the Oath of Moment or While We Stand We Fight or stuff like that. Now my favorite section of this video, the Synergies. The loadout for the Librarian Dreadnought. I recommend to spend 1 command point for the hero of the chapter on him to give him the Iron Resolve Warlord trait from the Space Marine book. This will mean that he'll have 9 wounds and a 6-up shrug, paired with a 5-weapon 1, -1 damage, and -1 to hit from the smoke screen. I think it will make him pretty survivable. And it's very important for the Dreadnought to survive, because if you manage to live through your opponent's shooting and charge phases, especially the shooting phase, because if you get killed in the charge phase, you can always spend 2 command points on only Death Does Duty End and fight on death. But if you get shot, you can't do that. So your goal for the Librarian Dreadnought is to survive the shooting phase. And if you do that and survive the charge phase, you will have your next turn to wreak even more havoc. Again, the Chapter Master rerolls are a great thing to have with the Librarian Dreadnought, because it will make him much more reliable in combat. He already wounds almost anything in the game on 2s, and helping him hit is extremely important. As for the Captain's loadout, I'm thinking about 2 ways to go. First, you can build a murder machine, or you can build something that will make your opponent's life much harder. The murder version is the Hammer of Baal relic on him, or the Mastercrafted upgrade on the Thunder Hammer. It's your choice, both versions are great. I myself gravitate more towards the damage 4 Mastercrafted Thunder Hammer, even though the Hammer of Baal is also great with no penalty to hit and AP 3. His warlord trait should be Gift of Foresight for 1 reroll of a save, hit and wound roll, and the second warlord trait for him is the Imperium Sword for +1 strength on the hammer, so strength 9 +1 attack and rerolling charges. With this build, your captain will be able to take on a lot of things in combat and win. The second tactical option is giving him the relic Visage of Death for -1 to hit in combat and aura of no obsec on enemy units within 3 inches of him, and the good old Rights of War warlord trait for obsec on your core character units within 6 of him, and again the Gift of Foresight for extra survivability and punch. With this loadout, you will be able to flip the objectives single-handedly with this captain, no matter how many units there are on the objective, because he will have obsec whilst everyone else within 3 inches of him won't have one. As for the chaplain, his warlord trait is a pretty obvious one. It's Wise Orator, especially if you're going for the Terminator route and planning to use the Commanding Orator. It will save you a command point. But anyways, reciting litanies on 2s is very important, because you can't reroll those and you need them to go off. The Icon of the Angel relic is an excellent one. It's aura of reroll charges for Blood Angels units within 6, and we all know how important it is to make charges for combat armies. Third litany I would recommend as the Mantra of Strength. It will make him deadlier in combat, but if you are afraid of mortal wounds, you can go for the Aura of 5-up Shrug against mortals instead. The Upon Wings of Fire is a great way to make your Vanguard Vats even more potent as the objective grabbers. It basically allows you to put them in deep strike for one turn, and then in your next movement phase, put them anywhere on the table within 9 inches of the enemy. Sort of like the guerrilla tactics for the Phobos units, but you aren't limited to the table edges, which is important. Another great thing the supplement provides us with is the 1 command point Descent of Angels stratagem that gives your fly unit that arrived from reinforcements this turn 2 things: +1 to hit in combat and ignoring any modifiers to your charge roll, which is very popular nowadays. The Custodians have the Tanglefoot Grenade, Tau have multiple ways of making your charges harder, Death Guard still have that awesome stratagem of the Inexorable Plague Company that subtracts 2 from your charge roll, the Repulsor field of the Space Marines, and so on and so forth. So having a way to mitigate that modifiers is great for the combat army. And last but not least, if you have Eliminators, I recommend to pay 1 command point to give the Sergeant Quake rounds. It basically allows you to apply +1 to hit to any enemy unit that you hit with this round until the end of the turn, and it's great to have +1 to hit on the target of your choosing. And let's quickly run again through the relics. The first 3 we've already discussed. The Visage of Death is a great thing because returning off OBSEC is very helpful, and the -1 to hit is a great addition. I think this relic is absolutely essential for any Blood Angels list. Icon of the Angel, again, great. Aura of reroll charges will save you a lot of command points, and if you have a character that can carry this relic, give it to the character. Hammer of Baal, a great weapon, not essential because most of the weapon relics aren't essential, but if you are looking to make your character more deadly, your captain or your lieutenant more deadly in combat, it's a great way to do so. Galleon Staff, +1 to cast for your Librarian for the Sanguinary Discipline and extra point of AP on his Force Staff. I'm not sure that you want to run a typical standard librarian when you have Mephiston Librarian Dreadnoughts, but if you do, this is a great way to make your powers go off more reliably. Wrath of Baal, it's a great relic if you are running the Sanguinary Ancient. It gives your jump pack units +2 to move. The problem with +2 to the move characteristic is that you already have 12 inches of movement, so you won't be able to charge in the first turn, but if you move again in the next turn, it will be enough to reach almost any target on the board. Of course, +2 inches to your move is nice, but if I were to choose between, say, Icon of the Angel or the Wrath of Baal, I would most definitely choose the Icon of the Angel. The Archangel's Shard, not a bad relic by any means, but if you have a choice, I think it's better to go for the Hammer of Baal. And the Quake Bolts, again, we've already discussed them. They are a great relic and a great addition to your force, especially if you have the Eliminators with their sweet 2+ ballistic skill. And let's quickly run through the roster example that I've concocted before this video. It's a battalion, it has a captain, the tactical version that we've already discussed, a chaplain, a Terminator chaplain for the Canticle of Hate, which has the Icon of the Angel relic, 1 Librarian Dreadnought, it's a Chief Librarian so that we can use both Quickening, Wings of Sanguinius, and the Shield of Sanguinius as well, using the 1 command point stratagem to cast an additional power. I have given him the Meltagun because I think that 5 points for an extra melt shot is nice to have. 3 units of 5 Assault Intercessors, 2 Contemptor Dreadnoughts with the Meltas, 1 unit of 10 Assault Terminators, 10 Vanguard Vats with Lightning Claws, Storm Shields, and Jump Packs. In the heavy support, I have 3 units of 3 Eliminators, and one of these units has the Quake Bolts upgrade on the Sergeant. So that's it, guys. I hope this video was useful for you. I love the Blood Angels. I think they are one of the best chapters in the whole Space Marines family. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.